Hey everybody, VR Gaming Fan here. I saw a video from a YouTuber who had done a temperature test comparison between the Rift and the Vive because they had noticed that the Rift felt a lot hotter when he was wearing it. So the first thing he tested is he put the two units down, put a temperature sensor inside the unit in the same place in both of them, just above the lens on the one eye. And they turned the units on so they were actually rendering something and just left them sitting on a table. And the Rift ramped up to about 15 degrees hotter than the Vive. Then he put the units on one at a time and played some games with them on, and the temperature consistently continued to ramp up basically at the same rate, but of course with the Rift starting off 15 degrees higher, with it finally ending off when the heating up capped out, with the Vive being at about 94 degrees Fahrenheit and the Rift being at 106 degrees Fahrenheit. 106 degrees is really, really hot. I mean, 106 degree fever, you're in the hospital, ice bath, dying. So I was interested because, you know, a single data point isn't necessarily evidence of anything other than, you know, maybe one or both of his units are, you know, not operating the way they normally would. So I made some inquiries to some other people who had both a Rift and a Vive, and they reported the same thing, that the Rift gives off a lot of heat. Like when you power up the Rift and it's just sitting there on the table, when you go to reach for it, it's emanating heat from the unit. It heats up that much. So as far as the sweating issue goes, if you ever do take your Rift to room scale, you're going to find it a vastly more uncomfortable situation than with the Vive, because the foam on the Rift isn't as porous, so heat doesn't escape as easily. It gets trapped inside more. The unit itself puts out more heat, and then you add to that the exercise of you moving around, and you are going to sweat literal bullets. And because the foam is not as absorbent as the foam on the Vive, that sweat is going to end up pooling inside the unit. One issue that I've heard many reports of is a fogging up of the lenses of the Rift, because all of that heat and moisture gets trapped inside, doesn't have anywhere to go, and so it fogs up the lenses. And so they have to periodically stop, take it off, wipe off the lenses, pour out the sweat, put the unit back on. So basically this is going to be a major issue for anyone who wants to do any kind of like really extended gaming in the Rift, or if they want to attempt any kind of moving around room scale of any kind, in addition to all the other technical hurdles you'll have to overcome in order to do room scale with the Rift. You're going to find it just really insanely hot and sweaty to do so. It's going to be very, very uncomfortable. Some people have reported that the padding, when you start sweating, gets very abrasive on your skin. I don't know if that is only particular people who have sensitive skin, or whether that's just particular units, there's something wrong with their padding, or whether that is a more general, all-over problem. But basically, the whole, not just the design of the Rift. I mean, obviously it wasn't designed to be hotter and trap sweat more. It would have been stupid for them to design it that way. But not only is the design of the Rift specifically targeted towards a sit-down experience, the inadvertent aspects of its design and manufacture also limit you in what you can do with it, because if it gets that hot and fogged up and everything else, it's going to make room scale, at the very least, unpleasant. So just wanted to let everyone know, you know, give people forewarning. If you have a Rift or are planning on getting one, or one's on the way or whatever, and your intent is to attempt to take it to room scale, this is something you need to be aware of. For people that have the Rift, I mean, generally my advice is sell your Rift and buy a Vive. Or, you know, whatever comes down the road next, not necessarily a Vive, maybe a Star VR or a Fove or whatever comes out. Or, you know, wait for the second generation. But if you have a Rift or are still, determined to get one, I would recommend just sticking with the seated experience VR, because all of the factors that get in the way of doing room scale seem to keep piling up when it comes to the Rift. Pretty much, the only piece of good news that in all of my watching of videos and reading reviews and press releases and everything else, the only piece of good news I've ever seen concerning the Rift came from Steam. Because Steam said, we're going to support the Rift for our chaperone system. We're going to modify the chaperone system and have a version of it that's compatible with the Rift for those people that want to attempt room scale and use our room scale games. At no cost to Rift users, no additional cost to Rift users, Steam is providing this as a free service. And that is really fucking cool. They didn't need to do that. It was really cool of them to do that. But that's it. The only piece of good news I've ever seen concerning the Rift came from Rift's competitor, not from Oculus. So, I'm really, really, really disappointed in Oculus. They were the ones that really got VR going, and I got a Rift DK1, and I followed news about Oculus and about the Rift just voraciously. Constantly I wanted more information. I want more, and I want it sooner, and everything. And the more I followed their story, the more and more disillusioned I became in VR in general. And I was very relieved when I saw that not only, like in the beginning, even before Oculus started doing stupid things, there were lots of other companies that were jumping on the VR bandwagon, and they were coming up with peripherals and everything else. And I found that really, really encouraging. So when Oculus started making all these mistakes, I started to become very concerned about the future of VR. But everybody basically just said, well, if Oculus is going to be idiots, we're just going to go off and do our own thing. And so you have other headsets, you have the peripherals that other companies have been working on, have either modified their peripherals to try and work with the Oculus, or they've basically said, screw Oculus, we'll just make our peripherals compatible with other products, other headsets instead. And basically the VR industry was so well supported and so solid that even though the founder of modern VR, VR has been around for a long time, but the founder of modern consumer level VR could completely become idiots, and the industry could not only survive it, but thrive. So very, very heartening. And it's really encouraging for VR in general that Oculus can keep making all these titanic mistakes, and yet VR is still growing, it's still flourishing, rather than the future of VR being tied to Oculus and Oculus's mistakes. So, as much as, it's always bad news when it comes to Oculus, the news for VR in general is still really, really positive, with a very bright future, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what all the other companies involved in VR, and not Oculus, have up their sleeves and what they have for us in the future. Talk to you next time.